Okay, back again. Our next victim on the chopping block is the video you see in front of you. Let's hit the play button and listen to this guy blab his pie hole for a bit. Then he's going to talk for a bit before I interrupt, most likely. And although there are some things in this that are correct, he leaves a lot of information out, so it paints a very large false picture. You know, it's like I say, you have good math and then you have good math gone bad. It's not that the math necessarily is bad, but it is the way in which you have used it to paint a false picture. So, without any further ado, here we go.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head.
Really?
A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans
how they thought
wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was.
By banks.
Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 20% groups. They asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed.
No,
not
that's
only do the
not
bottom
shocking
20%
at all.
and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans
Yes, and in a minute
barely have any of the wealth.
I will correct
you. It's hard to even see them on the
things.
chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have.
Yep, sure do.
But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100.
They just keep falling out everywhere.
Make it simple. Here they are.
Keep
Teachers,
it simple, stupid.
Coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism. All the wealth of the country distributed equally.
No, that is
we all
ideal.
know that won't work. We need to encourage.
That is the ideal socialism, but that is not how socialism works in practice. Go look at any socialist society and you will see it does not work that well. And for the retards that go, well, what about Sweden? They're not a true socialist society.
Encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve.
Yeah, but look at all the money the poorest person. There's no way the poorest person, the bum on the street, is not going to have that much money. Because, yeah, that's a large chunk of change right there.
This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America.
Yep.
The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change. And the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact,
Yeah, that's because the poorest Americans, well, you gotta, let's see what, right in here is your people that haven't had a job in forever and live on the streets. And then you got the ones that are disabled, so they live on disability. And then you have people that have way too many kids too young. You got the people that buy way too much shit. They buy stuff out of their means. But we'll get to that here in a minute.
even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself.
Yeah, but see that guy there? Really ever is that guy just the CEO? That is a guy that knows how to make money with his money. Or actually make money with your money to line his pockets and yours.
This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that
Or he could be some guy that got lucky and made a video game.
I have to give him a whole new column of his own because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%?
Yep, but you know what? The bottom 45%? 45 to 49, I think it's 49. Well, somewhere between 45 to 49% pay zero federal income taxes. And this guy here, unless he found a way to get out of it, he was paying almost 40% on his taxes. 40% of this comes right off the top, goes to the federal government.
8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has...
So his 40% helps provide benefits for these people down here at the poverty line.
7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds.
Yeah.
The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5%.
Okay. Let's look at that. These guys up here own half of the stocks and bonds, while these guys down here own 0.5. So what does that tell you? That if more of these people down here started to invest in stocks and bonds, which is where a lot of these guys here, along with being lawyers and doctors, got their money, but it's definitely where these guys here got their money from, which is only taxed at 15 or 18%, I think, because you're using your own money to make money. But at the same time, it's a big risk to you can either collect a small increase on your money and have it guaranteed safe, or you can risk your money. These guys here usually won't go rich to poor overnight. But somebody down in here, they can go from here to here overnight with a good investment. Or they can go from here way down to here with a bad one. These guys here have risked their money
of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by.
Yeah, because they're putting their money in different things.
I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money. But do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average?
It's not about working 380 times harder than his average employee. Moron.
Employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner.
The janitor is rarely the lowest paid employee
in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour.
Yes, and guess what? If that lonely little worker down here on the bottom totem pole fucks something up, guess who? Yeah, that worker may get fired for it, but this guy here can get fired, he can get sued, he can get thrown in prison. So, he is not only responsible for this lonely little guy, he is responsible for the safety of every last person in that company, and he's also responsible for the company making a profit. So to where he may not have to work, quotation marks, as hard, his stress level is 400 times more than the guy down here that just has to show up and sit behind a typewriter or show up and push a fucking broom down a goddamn hallway. What is so fucking hard to understand about that? Whether the company rises or falls does not depend on a janitor. It depends on the CEO or the board and the managers.
We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all.
Yeah, the reality is not all what we think it is. Because you want a hamburger flipper to make as much as somebody that has gone through training and schooling or a 2-year degree or a vocational school, or you send these retards off to college to get a major in women's study, which they can't get a real fucking job with. Now let's take a look at a few things here. This is minimum wage. Minimum wage in the U.S., $7.25 in the lowest states. $7.25 an hour. And let me pop up the calculator. That means they make $15,000 a year, which is not a lot. But if you are an unskilled laborer, you should not be paid a lot. I, as a company, have to train you. Guess what happens? Now, by trade, I am a vehicle technician. And half the reason dealerships are scared to send people to training unless they absolutely have to is because people get training and then walk out the fucking door and the company is left hanging on to all that money they spent. And a lot of places I work make you sign a deal that you cannot quit or go to another job unless you reimburse them for your schooling, because they're spending so much money on it. Now, this is the federal poverty guidelines for 2015, except Hawaii and Alaska, which are a little bit more. At $15,000 a year, you make a hair too much to qualify for food stamps. Food stamps or SNAP program is $120,000, but you do qualify for HEAP, which is winter heating and summer cooling assistance. They can help you with propane or electric up to a certain dollar amount. And that's usually a local and a state program that gets money federally from the federal government, from those federal taxes that the rich people are paying 40% on. If you look, there are people There are stars and actors and such. If they don't have to live in California for their business, they are leaving. Why? Because they are tired of paying 60 to 70% of their income to federal, state, and local taxes. And yes, so a lot of these people that make over $250,000 a year are paying 60% in taxes between federal, state, and local. And here's the other part. Everybody gets the exact same amount of money out of Social Security. Nobody gets more money than the other, except for people that failed to pay into it for their whole life. They will get extra. Dang it, out of drink. So, and here's the other thing that, let's get, top federal income tax rate is 39.6% on anybody that makes over $415,000 a year, which that's a pretty good chunk of change. 39% of that, that's just over a third, so that's around $100,000. That's a lot of money to pay into taxes. But let's go here to your chart, and here is one problem. These people down here, this is where you're born at. You are born right here. And it has been proven that people are climbing out of this middle class and heading up here. There is actually getting, see, we're not this even 20-20-20 crap. There are more people that are in the middle and upper class than there is people that are in the poor class. And you show no real representation of what the salary range is. And these people, as they get older, they're worth more money. They acquire a house. You know, you start down here, you buy your house, or maybe it's around in here, you buy your house after you've worked a few years on the job and you're making good money. And you go up here. Well, part of the problem with the people down here is some people are happy living right here. Some people are happy as long as they got food on the table. They can afford their cable TV. They can afford all their other stuff. They're happy, so they don't care to move up. Some of these people were up here and lost their jobs, and their job was outmoded. So they went down to here, or they had a mental break and they tumbled down to here. There's all kinds of reason that people are in this. Most of the people that are down here do have poor educations, but the education you get is your responsibility, and it started out as a responsibility of your parents and your teachers. Then it becomes your responsibility to educate yourself as you get older. And it doesn't necessarily mean going to college. I know quite a few people that I have made more money than without ever setting foot in a college, that thought they were so much better than me because they've been to college. Yet they're the ones that you find them flipping a hamburger at McDonald's, making $7 an hour because they took a course in bullshit. They have an arts degree. Well, I say to one person, why don't you take that arts degree and go get you some training and become a CNC operator? No, that's beneath me. Well, you get to use that art degree, and you get paid starting off $50,000 a year, which instantly puts you into the middle class. But no. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to go and start a job that will put you into the middle class? Most people coming out of vocational schools for automotive or equipment repair, they're instantly $10 an hour. I just seen a special with Mike Rowe. There was a place that was hiring heavy equipment mechanics that were starting out $50,000 a year, and people would be making $125,000 a year plus within 2 to 3 years on the job. But you got to get dirty, you got to get greasy. Most of your people that run garbage trucks, that starts out around $15,000 or $15 an hour for most garbage trucks. That's $35,000, $40,000 a year for those jobs starting out. It's a dirty job. People don't want to do it. That's why they are down here, because it is a dirty, stinky, greasy, grimy job that people don't want to do, and they don't have an education to do something that would put them up here, or they don't want to apply themselves. And like I said, this is where you start out. You're born down here. No matter who you are, you were born, except for very few people, you were born down here. Most of the people with kids even in here, once they're out of the house and out of college, they're here. They don't have mommy daddy money to depend on, because mommy and daddy said go get a job. Some people are lucky and never leave this zone because they are able to get a good job out of college. But everybody's state is poor. If you take and put anybody on an island by themselves, they're going to be here in the poor land until they build stuff up. When you get older, people buy nicer cars, they buy boats, houses, things like this. That all increases their wealth. Now I want to come down here and look at some of these comments. What about the top 1% of the 1%? Well, that's a very few billionaires, and most of them have started a major corporation. Interesting indeed. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Socialism, isn't that the same as communism? Not quite, but socialism usually leads to communism unless they have some kind of document that stops it, such as a constitution or something to that effect that limits the government's powers. The problem, let's see, here we go. So the problem isn't just concentrated wealth. It's concentrated wealth in useless hands. We are already see old technologies rebranded as new because leaders of major research firms lack the capability to understand what their employees are doing. Did I miss something? Is old technology being relabeled as new? This technology results in moving backwards. 200 years from now, computers will be slower than they are today. Fewer diseases will be curable than today, and the average lifespan will be shorter than today because the wealth is concentrated more in useless hands. Are you a retard? Because computers are a hell of a lot faster today. Way more diseases are curable, and or wiped out in the first world. Cue the Sanders supporters. Trevor, you should be one. No, he shouldn't. This is why we need Bernie Sanders. What? Because you want Bernie to give you money from somebody else. Money that somebody else earned. Which subsidies is another video I need to do. We need to elect Bernie Sanders. No, we don't. Sanders has been fighting his entire life, and we're here to elect presidents. I believe he'd use the bully pulpit to its full force and galvanize the people enough to embrace his agenda, regardless of what the Republicans may want. But I agree 100% with Trump's comment, okay? I'm not saying life is supposed to be fair. No. Life is not fair. But when the people who make your phone are committing mass suicide, something's wrong. Yes. you can blame China. It's not the company's fault. That's the China work laws. So you want to get that changed, you go over there. I'll agree. Society is getting stupider because we are brainwashing children. No, they can't just print money. But you keep believing. Let's see. This is sick. The top 1% could spend millions a day for the rest of their life, and then they will die super mega rich. Why should they keep all that money when it could help eliminate so many problems we are having in this country? If I give you money, will you go to work? Because there's a lot of people that will and do. Because that's how the rich people get rid of their money, is by paying people to do work for them. Jealous much? Keep all that money when it could eliminate so many problems in our country. Like, I'm not saying going around giving people free money. Yes, you are. No, not that. I'm saying investing in America, creating jobs, creating companies that take care of veterans, creating companies that take children out of poverty. Well, it's not the job of a company to take children out of poverty. It's not the job of a company to take care of veterans, and I am a veteran. That is the government's job, is to take care of veterans. It is the parents' job to take the children out of poverty. And you have a lot of people that have no business creating kids, that create kids and therefore stay in poverty. It is companies' job to create jobs and make money via the creation of jobs. But because of people like you, they can't, because the federal government makes it too hard. This shouldn't surprise anyone who's attended an American public school. However, there's a systematic support for certain professions. For example, 1 in 7 of the 1%ers are doctors, and something like 1 in 8 are lawyers. So, they got a good job that took a lot of schooling and a lot of hard work. Why shouldn't they make money? You got a problem? There shouldn't be a problem with people profiting off of health care. What do you expect these doctors to do? Work for free, of course. Doctor, I want you to go to school for the next 8 years, dedicate your life to learning how to cure me and fix me, and then I want you to go to work for chicken feed. No, we don't need Bernie Sanders, all the Bernie Sanders retards coming out. This is part of the reason I came back to this, because you had all these new idiots commenting on here. Bernie, oh, we love the Bernie. Yeah, feel the burn when Bernie gives you a VD from doing a reach around to grab your checkbook while you're not looking. I believe this country doesn't need a revolution but another civil war. We, the people, should hold the country hostage and force this farce we call a government to do our bidding. The way, I suppose, is actually quite simple. Cripple the company's economic engine by strategically having thousands, if not millions, of workers stop working for about a month. All that would do would hurt your pocketbook. And only then will the greedy corporations bend to our will. The queen bee cannot survive without her workers. Well, the greedy corporations are there to make a profit. And the greedy corporations like to put some money in the bank for when the greedy corporations aren't doing so greedily well. So they can still pay your stupid fucking ass, moron. You're part of the reason why so many small businesses fail. Because they don't have the capital to keep going through a hard time. I'm not sure what that one's about. Feel the burn, people. Yeah, feel the VD from Bernie Sanders. This is exactly why you are a moron. Bentley, Square Condo email. Wow. Well, while I finish up enjoying my chips here, we're going to call this an end of the video, and we will catch you on the flip side.